go ahead and show you how to create the sheet metal example part in Inventor. So the first thing I'm going to do is click to create a new part. Under the part type, instead of clicking a standard IPT file like we're used to, we're going to click to create a sheet metal IP. So I'll go ahead and hit create. The first thing I'm going to do in sheet metal part is to create a 2D sketch. I will go ahead and select the XY plane to do that on. I'm going to click the line tool and start at the origin, and I'm going to draw a vertical line with a dimension of 1.18 inches. Then I will again draw from the origin, and I will make a horizontal line at 5.91 inches. From the end of that, I will again draw a vertical line straight up at 2.36 inches. And I'll go ahead and click to finish that sketch. All right, it didn't take my last one, so I'll double click to edit that sketch. Click the line tool again, draw the vertical line straight up, and again make that 2.36 inches, and then I will finish the sketch. All right, so kind of the benefit of using this sketch mode to create a sheet metal part, I can then use this simple sketch, and I can use the contour flange, and it will create that part for me. And so I'm going to flip the direction, and I'm going to change the dimension of the length of that contour flange to 2.36 inches, and I will hit apply. And that will give us kind of the basic start of our sheet metal part here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to round over these corners. And so I'm going to go ahead and get the corner round tool. I'm going to select my two edges here, and I'm going to make that corner round 1.18 inch. And then I'll hit apply, and it'll round over those corners for me. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the hole that goes in through the center of the where those rounds are. So I'll click to create a new sketch. I will project my geometry. I'll put a point on the center point. I'll finish that sketch, and then I'll use the hole tool to create the hole that goes through the object. All right, the hole is going to be a 1.5 inch. Excuse me, it's going to be not 1.5. It's going to be a 1.18. No, it's not going to be 1.8. It's going to be 0.79. All right, so we're going to have a 0.79 inch hole that goes through the object. All right, and in the case of the termination of where we want it to go through, we want it to go through all. And so it's going to cut that hole clear through the entire length of the part. So when I have that done, I'll go ahead and click OK. Now we need to pattern some mounting holes on this face of that flange. And so I'll go ahead and click a 2D sketch again. The first thing I'm going to do is click to create a construction line. And I'm going to make that construction line go through the center of this object. So first I'll click project geometry so I get a center point. And then I'm going to come out here and draw a line, construction line through the center. From there, I'm going to draw a line up at 45 degrees. So I drew a construction line. Now I'm going to dimension it and make sure that angle is 45 degrees. And so that's going to give us the location of where to place our hole. The last thing we need to place the hole is a construction circle. So I'll go ahead and click that circle tool with the construction line selected, and I'll go ahead and draw now the 1.5 inch diameter. I'll unselect construction, and I will put a point right where those two, the construction circle and the 45 degree line, intersect, and that's going to be the placement for our mounting hole. And so I'll go ahead and click to finish the sketch. I'll again select the hole tool, and this time I will make that hole a 0.22 inch diameter, and we're going to have the termination of this hole be just the thickness of the part. So I'm going to select the termination distance, and it's going to make it terminate just the distance of that face. So then I can click OK. Next thing for me to do is to select circular pattern. We're going to have 4 mounting holes, and so I will select the hole. Then I'll come over here and select the rotation axis that I want to rotate, pattern the holes around. And so I'll select the larger hole to do that. And we're going to have 4 mounting holes. So I'll go ahead and select 4, and I can click OK. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to add some punch features to the part. All right, and so what you're going to need to do is to come up here and in File, and we're going to go ahead and select Open. All right, and when you get there, you're going to want to select Users. You're going to want to select Public, and then you'll select Public Documents, Autodesk, Inventor 2019, Catalog, and then we're going to want to select Punches. And so what we're going to do is we're going to edit our OB round punch. So I'll go ahead and select that, and I'll click to open it. When that's open, I'm going to click over here to edit feature. In the limit for the length, we are going to want to make sure that that says none. And also in the limit for the width, we're going to make sure that it's none. And so what we're doing is we're getting rid of the limits for this feature. And we're going to use this to create some punches in our part. And so I'll go ahead and click Apply. I'll save that, and I'll go ahead and close that feature. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create the center point for these slots we're going to put on this face. And so I'll go ahead and click to create a new sketch. I'm going to rotate that sketch so I can look at it from a different, little different angle. First thing I'm going to do is create a construction line that goes through the center of the part. And so I'm going to find my green dot in the width dimension here. And I'm going to create that construction line. And I'm going to do the same thing in the width dimension the other way. So for height up here, for right here, I'm going to find the green dot, draw the construction line through the object. And I'm going to use those construction lines to locate these center points. And so I'm going to put a center point on either side. And then I'm going to dimension those from this center construction line at 1.48 inches. Same thing this way, 1.48 inches. And then we are going to want to make sure this, see how my center line moved? We didn't intend for that to happen, so we're going to want to make sure that we constrain that correctly. And so if I'm going to go ahead and put this dimension so I can see what the overall dimension is, and I'm going to go ahead and click Accept just so I can see that. Then I'm going to dimension this so it's in the middle, and so it should be 5.67, and I'm going to divide that by 2 to place it in the middle of my part. When I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and finish that sketch. Now I'm going to click to use the punch tool, and it's going to bring up my punch directory. And so the punch is, we're going to use the OB round that we selected. I'm going to select Open. And then under the geometry for this, we are going to want to under size dimension, we're going to want to change the width size to 0.39 inches, and that's going to be the width of the punch. And we're going to change the length to 1.57. And so that's why we had to edit the feature here. because the limit was 1.5 inches. And so we want it to be 1.57. I'll click finish, and it will add that punch feature to the part. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put some circular cutouts in the part. So I'll go ahead and click to make a new sketch on here on the part. I'll get the circle tool. I'll find the center point, and I'll go ahead and draw a circle that is 0.39 inch radius. So I'll multiply that number by 2. I'll do one on the other side as well. 0.39 is the radius, and so I'll multiply that by 2 because I'm entering a diameter. I can then finish that sketch, and this time we're going to use the cutout because we're going to cut out these parts of the circle. So I'll use the cut tool. I'll select my 2 holes, and I'll go ahead and select OK, and it will cut out those parts. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a flange, and we'll add that flange to each of the edges here. And so I'm going to go ahead and click the flange tool. I'm going to select my 2 edges that I want to create the flange for. We want the distance of the flange to be 1.18 inches. And we are going to make the flange angle -45 degrees. And so it's going to create that flange so it's going down. And then I can go ahead and click apply, and it will create those 2 flange parts for us. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the lower kind of flange that's connected to the part here. And so I'm going to kind of tilt my object so I can see the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and select to get a work plane, and I'm going to make that work plane between 2 coplanar edges. And so when I have that selected, I'm going to select the bottom edge of that flange and also the bottom edge of this flange, and that's going to give me a work plane to create the next part of the object on. All right, and so when I have that done, I'll go ahead and create a new sketch. I'm going to rotate it so I can see this part a little bit better. The first thing I'm going to do is come in here and I'm going to draw a line the length of this flange. All right, then I'll dimension that line. So I'm going to see how far it is from this edge to this edge, and I'm going to make that dimension 1.18 minus 0.98. All right. From there, I'll go ahead and create the geometry for the flange that we're creating. I'm going to make a line 0.98 inches. I'm going to go over in the width dimension now, 3.94 inches. Then I'm going to go 0.78. And then it goes back to this point and then connect it straight up to the top. When you have that part done, we can go ahead and click to finish our sketch. Then we're going to use the face tool to create a geometry to make that solid geometry. So when we have it selected, we'll go ahead and click apply. Then we're going to use the bend tool to make these 2 parts go together. So I'll go ahead and select bend. I'll select these 2 edges, and it will create the bend that's needed to put those parts in. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to round off all the corners of that flange that we just created. So I'm going to click corner round again. I'm going to change the radius to I believe, 0.25 inches, a quarter inch, and then I'm going to start selecting these edges. So I'm going to click to select an edge, and I'm going to select all of these edges around that flange we just created, including the inside edge. I'll go ahead and click apply. And so we've round those edges off. Then we're going to go ahead and use the punch tool again to create that punch that will go through on that object. And so I'll go ahead and click to create a new sketch on this surface. I'm going to again turn it so I can look at it from the angle I want. I'm going to go ahead and use the point tool, and I'm going to put a point on my object. Then we'll dimension it. It should be 0.39 inches from the bottom, and then it should be 1.97 from this edge to here. So I'll go ahead and put that in. Then I will finish it. I'll use the punch tool again. I'll click my OB round and click open. We're going to want to edit the size of that again. And so under the size, I'm going to go ahead and select the length that we want it to be. We want it to be 2.95 inches. And the width is going to be 0.31. So when I do that and finish it, it's going to create the size of slot punch that we want. Then I can simply use our mirror tool to mirror to the other side. The first thing we're going to want to do before we do that is put a work plane in to mirror it. And so I'm going to go ahead and click the drop down menu. I'll click mid plane between two planes, and I'll come in here and I'll select that work plane and this one on the other side, and it'll give me a work plane in the middle. Then I can click the mirror tool and I can select the features that I want to mirror. So I'm going to select the flange and also the slot. Then I'll click mirror plane and it will mirror that over to the other side. And then within that, I'll use the bend tool again to bend those two edges together. All right, so we have one last thing to do. We have to add a couple of more flanges to our part. And so adding these vertical flanges, I'll just click the flange tool and I'll select this edge and this edge. We're going to want those flanges to be a length of 1.18, and we're going to want them to bend up at 90 degrees. When we have that done, we can go ahead and click apply. And we can see how it created a relief for those bends to be made in the part. We're going to go ahead and edit that a little bit. And so to do that, we are going to select the corner seam tool. And so I'll click corner seam, and we are going to want to change that corner seam. I'll select the outside edge and the outside edge. We're going to want to change it to overlap. And then we're going to change the gap size to 5/1000 of an inch. And then under corner, we're going to say that we want it to tear. And so you can see the difference between the auto, it's leaving this portion. We're going to want it to use the relief shape of tear. And then we can see that it has put a very small space between those two, which is exactly what we want for our feature. And so I'll select and I'll do the exact same thing on the other side and click apply. Click the home screen, and we have then created our sheet metal part. The last thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and turn the visibility off of our two work planes so we don't look at those anymore. And we can see our example part. Ooh, one thing I forgot. Notice when we mirrored the part over, it didn't round these corners off. So I'll go ahead and click corner round again. I'll come around and I will select all of the edges for our other part over here. So we'll round off those corners as well. Get that last piece done, and I believe your part should be finished. Let's take a quick look. Everything looks correct. So let's call our part good. So go ahead and save it. And that's your example sheet metal part.